Every month you invest, you've done everything right. So why does it feel like nothing is actually changing? Let me paint you a picture. You set up automatic investing. Every month, money leaves your account and goes into an index fund. You picked a low-fee one. You picked a broad one. You even stopped checking your balance every day because that's what disciplined long-term investors do, right? You tell yourself, I'm doing the responsible thing, but somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a quiet voice that won't go away. It says, is this actually working for me? Here's what I want to show you today. The strategy you're following was built for a very specific context. And somewhere between that context and your bank account, something got lost in translation. By the end of this video, you won't just see your index fund differently. You'll see the entire advice ecosystem around it differently. So where did this sentence come from, and what got quietly stripped out of it along the way? In 2013, Warren Buffett wrote something in his annual shareholder letter. He said he wanted his wife's inheritance managed simply after he was gone. 90% in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund, 10% in short-term government bonds. That one sentence traveled across the entire internet. It got copied, screenshotted, translated, repeated, until it hardened into an unquestioned rule. Buy index funds. Automated. Forget it. You'll be fine. But here's what this is really an example of. Context collapse. Buffett wasn't issuing universal investment advice. He was solving a very specific problem. How do you manage a large sum of money that already exists for someone who won't be making active decisions over a very long horizon? That's a preservation problem. The goal is to not lose. The goal is not to grow. The moment that answer got detached from its original question and handed to millions of people who are still trying to turn a small number into a bigger number, it became something different. It became a solution transplanted into the wrong problem, and nobody labeled it when it crossed the border. This is what you could call a context mismatch. The advice is technically accurate. The context it was meant for no longer exists. But the advice kept traveling anyway, because it's simple, it's repeatable, and it comes with the most credible name in finance attached to it. The system rewards the spread of clean, authoritative sounding rules. It does not reward the footnotes. Hi, if this is your first time here, I'm Stoye. This channel exists because most financial advice is correct in the way that a translation is correct, technically accurate, but something essential got lost. Quick note, nothing here is financial advice. Talk to a licensed professional before making major decisions. What I do is show you the original language. Okay, let's keep going. Now let's look at what's actually inside the product you've been buying. The S&P 500 is a market cap weighted index. That phrase sounds technical, but the mechanism it describes is simple, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Market cap weighting means the more a company is worth, the more of your money automatically goes to it. Not the more profitable it is, not the more it's growing. The more the market has already decided its worth, which means this index has a built-in structural bias. It systematically amplifies whatever the market is currently most enthusiastic about. When a handful of tech companies become the most valuable companies in the world, the index routes an increasing share of every new dollar, yours included, directly into them, automatically, without asking. Right now, the top 10 companies in the S&P 500 account for over 35% of the entire index. The other 490 companies share what's left. What you bought as diversification is, at the structural level, a momentum amplifier. It doesn't spread your risk evenly across the economy. It concentrates your exposure at the frontier of wherever the most money has already flowed. In a rising market, that's a feature. In a correction, that distinction stops feeling academic very quickly. And here's the part worth sitting with. The concentration compounds over time. Every month you contribute, you're not buying the economy. You're buying the economy as filtered through current market sentiment, weighted toward whatever is already expensive. The index doesn't rebalance toward value. It rebalances toward size. I want you to sit with something. The same week you felt good about being a disciplined investor, the same week your automatic purchase went through without you thinking about it, the same week you told yourself that markets always go up in the long run. Corporate insiders at the largest companies inside that index were selling quietly, continuously, at scale, not because they panicked, not because they knew something catastrophic was coming, but because they understand something that passive investors are structurally prevented from acting on. Price is information. When you remove price sensitivity from your buying behavior, which is exactly what automatic, unconditional investing does, you become the ideal counterparty. You buy regardless of valuation. You absorb supply that more informed participants are looking to exit. You are, in the language of markets, a liquidity provider to people who are doing the opposite of what you are doing. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just how the plumbing works. In late 2021, retail money flooded into tech ETFs at record pace. The Nasdaq was near all-time highs. 4 months later, it dropped nearly 35%. The people who piled in at the peak spent over 2 years just getting back to zero, not because the market is rigged, because there's a tax built into ignoring price, and it's one that never shows up on your brokerage statement. You could call it the cost of operating without context. Every time you buy without knowing whether you're buying cheap or expensive, you're paying it. It just doesn't look like a fee. So what shifts when you actually understand this? You stop thinking about investing as a behavior to automate and start thinking about it as a context to read. Before each contribution, spend 5 minutes. Look up the current P/E ratio of the index you're buying. Compare it to its long-term historical average. That number tells you something real. It tells you how much enthusiasm is already priced in. High above average means you're paying for optimism. Near or below average means you're buying in the absence of it. You don't need to act dramatically on this information, but having it changes what you're doing from a reflex into a decision. Once a year, check whether your allocation has drifted. In a sustained bull market, your equity exposure grows without any action on your part, which means your risk profile grows with it, invisibly, while your statements stay green. Rebalancing isn't about timing the market. It's about not letting the market silently rewrite your risk tolerance for you, and keep a portion of your capital in something stable. Not because you're being cautious, but because optionality has value. The investor who has dry powder when prices fall isn't lucky. They've just preserved the ability to act when the cost of acting is lowest. None of this is about doing more. It's about replacing an automated reflex with an informed position. Before I close, I want to say something clearly. Index funds are not broken. They are genuinely one of the most powerful tools available to regular investors. Low cost, structurally simple, historically effective. None of that changes. What changes is how you hold them. The version of this strategy that got distributed at scale removed the judgment layer entirely and replaced it with a slogan: set it and forget it. That slogan is not wrong for every person in every situation, but it was never designed to be universal. It got treated as universal because universal is easier to say, easier to share, and easier to sell. What you've just done in the last 10 minutes is recover the part that got lost. You now know what the index is structurally doing with your money. You know what context the original advice came from. You know where the hidden cost lives. The mechanics haven't changed, but you're no longer operating inside them without knowing it. That's the actual catch. Not that the tool is wrong, that you were handed it without the original instructions. If this reframed something for you, the like button helps more people find it. Subscribe if you want this kind of structural breakdown every week. Drop a comment. When was the last time you checked the PE ratio of your index before buying in? I want to know how many people are doing this and how many just found out it exists. The one-page reference sheet from today is in the first link in the description. It's not a checklist. It's a set of reference points, the numbers that tell you whether you're buying with context or without it.